I don't always focus on going 100 miles an hour. I focus on the concepts and the lessons to be taken from that and how it's translatable. So when I break down a technique, for example, or I talk about an approach, this is something that I picked up from my original instructor, Sonny Nahara, when I trained with him before we ended up merging with Cobra Kai. He came up from Cobra Kai too. So it was kind of like a full circle deal. But he used to say that when there's a move being demonstrated, he's like, you want to focus on something at one time. And then, like, no one ever shows a move just one time and they're like, okay, go drill it. Right. So, like, if Jerry pulls people aside and then he's like, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do this pass from here to here. And then he'll show it again, focusing on another detail, shows again, focusing on another detail. And every time he's doing that, you should be looking at a different aspect of that move. Because as a whole, as an entity, it's a lot. But if you break it down, I think that can facilitate you with a little bit of a more checkpoints to address during your technique. So then that way, it'll be easier to process. So,
right. Yeah. So you're talking about more like the intellect instead of like the physical aspect of it, right? Like you want to break things down.
Yeah.
And can you go deeper into that a little bit? Like, okay, so we'll drill every time. What do you think at that level, right, of your understanding, people get wrong when they're drilling?
I think they focus on, depending on what stage you're on. If you're brand new, you're going to focus on just trying to like muscle your way through if you're a guy.
Yeah, sure.
If you're a female, you're going to be very timid. It's typically what I've found. Now, if you have been doing it for a couple of years,
say you're like your level.
Yeah. So as a black belt,
sure.
For me, like, so a little bit of insight on me is I got my black belt from Go, which is pretty much the head instructor at Cobra Kai that gave everyone their black belt that I pretty much predominantly train with. It was Jerry, Shane, Dave, Josh, Rich. I used to train with a lot too. So for me, it's when I came over to Syndicate to train with Jerry and Shane, I've had a massive growth in my own skill and knowledge because of their program, their exposure and everything. But I am not afraid to make mistakes. Like, I take the pride out of it, right? It's a learning process for me. So it's like, you submitted me like 30 times. That's great. But I'm literally focusing on this one aspect. So it's okay. I was just telling another teammate earlier today, I'm like, you either are going to commit to working on this or you're going to half-ass it and not commit to either one, or you're just not going to get better. So you got to let that fear go. I mean, that's the place to experiment. That's the place to have fun. That's the place to learn. Better there than out in the street or out in a competition, So for me, I that's what I focused on. I focused on what I wanted to work on initially was the leg locks. So I focused on leg locks for a good 6 months. Like, I would give up positions, I would lose positions, I would get frustrated, but at the end of the day, it's like, that's just my main focus. But I have a whole nother aspect behind my game.
Sure. Is it effortless for you to put that ego aside? Or do you are you still fighting with it like here and there?
It's not effortless, but it's also not a fight. At this point, it's more of an acceptance. Like, I know that if I want to get better, things are going to occur that may not always seem positive right away, right? So like, people who are successful in life, everyone around them only sees their success, but only the close people see their hard work to that success, right? So it's the same thing. If you're trying to learn something in the realm of grappling and you feel like everyone's beating you up or you're losing position or you're losing the technique because you're focusing on something else, it's like, well, that doesn't matter. That's not the priority, right? That's not your focus. So, but when you got it down, now you're going to bring everything together and then you're unstoppable, man. Everyone's like, where did this person come from? Like, who is this person? You know what I mean?
Kind of like chaining everything together from what you learned from like 6 months of doing leg locks and then translating it.
Yeah. And now it's like, oh, now that I feel very, very comfortable for this leg lock aspect, now I'm going to turn around and I'm going to show you like what my mount game looks like. My mount games. And then they're like, oh, whoa, where does mount game come from? Where do these takedowns come from? Where did this come from? Like, we thought that person was just like not very good in these positions. Like, no, that's not true at all. I was just focusing on something else.
I saw you, I was looking from the sidelines, right? And then there's some people that come in the gym, right?
Sure.
And they're a little aggressive. But then I kind of saw you go ham, not like in a bad way, but then it was like you were competing, and it was a great sight to see.
Sure.
Like the intensity of it.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's cool. Because far too often we see a role here and there. We all know each other, right? And then we're all like very courteous to each other.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
then it's fun just to see like when that happens at the gym. I didn't see too much of it. Like obviously we had a role, but then when you guys were standing up, dude, it was like two bears like going at it.
Oh yeah.
Like I don't.
Was this last
like,
week?
Yeah. I was like, dude, they're like going pretty ham. Like I said, it's like a polar bear and a brown bear like going fucking ham. I'm like, dude, that's like a sight to see. You know what I mean?
I learned early on because of the gyms that I was in and the training partners that I had, I never really got to go 100%.
Yeah.
And that used to hinder me in competitions because I wasn't used to exerting 100% of my energy and strength. So when I was going against guys my size, like I would be getting tossed around a little bit and I'd be like, I can't hold the position. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. And I would struggle. It was a big struggling transition from competing to training for me early on. But now, in this gym, we have a little bit more space. We have a little bit of bigger guys. And sometimes I will match pace depending on who's coming out and like wanting to, raise the stakes a little bit. Cause I like to, like I said, I like to have fun. I like to drill. But there are times where like I'm also been trying to push my wrestling a little bit more lately. So that's been my last focus, right? I did 6 months of leg locks. Now I'm doing 6 months of wrestling.
It's like your motivation.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So I'm like, so if I have somebody who's willing to stand with me and wanting to go toe to toe and we weigh about the same, like I'm going to really push the pace because I want to see I want to get a quick gauge of what do I need to continue to work on when I go with smaller opponents. Like, okay, because I'm not moving and tossing them around. I'm just kind of working my technique. So when I have somebody my size, it's like, okay, now I got to put some oomph behind I got to put, a little bit of power and a little bit of strength, and it takes more energy if I fail. So I got to be sharper with my technique and be ready to go.
Absolutely, man. And I like that because like I said, when we go to the gym, we're very courteous to each other and it's great, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, just like anything else, like say going off to another like sport, like say like striking or something.
Yeah.
Well, you got to have, you can flow and obviously, right? Because you don't want to get like CT or anything and go hard, but you have to get like a reality check of what you can do, right? Yeah. So not to say that you should go hard and go ham, you know what I mean? But I think you have to pick up the intensity, especially even if you're striking and you get I dare I say hurt a little bit, right?
Sure.
Because you don't want to get a false sense of like when you're competing or even out in the street, like, I'm pretty good. And then all of a sudden, like this guy that has shitty technique just murks you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's a fine line. And that's why like I've always encouraged competitions for individuals that are more like on the hobbyist side, that are kind of just like, we'll do it like casually and whatnot. I still always preach competition, just like the people that want to be competitors. I still, hey, like competition is the way to go. Not because like you should go out there and have this whole ego pride thing, but because it's like there is no better gauge. There's weight classes, there's age restrictions, there's all these things and parameters to try to implement like the most condensed individuals in that division so that everyone's kind of similar to all the parameters so that you can test out those skills,
Yeah, competition is like animalistic, right? Like the intensity, it's somewhat right.
It's like, just feel testosterone.
I mean, it's just people hype themselves. Like in competition, you kind of have to hype yourself up. Like I'm gonna, some people are like,
you gotta
believe
this
motherfucker.
You gotta believe in yourself. Absolutely.
Yeah, and then you're getting like, oh yeah, you're like creating all this stuff to like motivate you to get the upper hand. Like so some people, which is true. Like if you're going into a fight, it's like, I gotta feed my family, right? Like that's one thing that like motivates people, and then the other thing is like, no one believes in me. So they take it out on like the competition, which is funny. So getting back into, say, like if you go with like another person at your level, like a black belt, right? Yeah. What is like going back to like the ego thing, how is it different from like say rolling with like a brown belt, right?
Sure.
And then you're going black belt, and then here's another kicker, like he's kind of going ham. He's put that intensity level up. Like, what does it feel like to have that at that level? It's like you're going with it, like
you're
what? Just kind of like.
So I grew up in the era where like Dragon Ball Z was a really big thing, right?
Sure.
And so like every time we have these like live training sessions or sparring, whatever you want to call them, I kind of like put myself in that mode where it's like Goku only goes like 2%. initially in a fight, and then he just gets stronger and stronger as like the fight goes on.
Yeah.
And so I kind of like think about that too when I'm training. Like it's like I'm gonna match the person's pace. That's my entire goal. It's like if the person comes out at 100%, it's like, okay, I'm not gonna go 100 with you because I know what I'm capable of doing at 100. So I'm gonna normally I don't even go past 55. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So it's like I'm gonna start off at 75 now, and then be ready to push the pace a little bit. And then every minute that goes along, I'm pushing the pace more and more and more and more. If you're coming out at 100, but you're not gonna stay at 100 for 5, 6, 7 minutes. So it's usually I have a pretty good judge of that.
Yeah.
Now, if I'm going against another black belt, we're just feeling each other out. We're going out and I don't know them. We're just kind of like having fun, moving around, seeing what kind of tricks we're trying to pull on each other just to have fun. And then kind of, again, we're both matching pace. So like if I start going hard, they're going to go hard too. And if they're going hard, I'm going to go hard too, Yeah. So then it's like you kind of have to be aware of that and again, know what you're capable of. If you have terrible cardio, like you're not going to seek to push the pace at the first minute.
Yeah.
So you're going to be smart. You got to be strategic about it. But if you have an endless amount of cardio, like you're like, I don't care. We're just going to